the Ives Park once Kathy is here.
Sounds good. Okay, we're going to call to.
Sorry about
Let's call to order the February 3rd Public Arts Committee meeting. We'll start with a roll call. We have Margie.
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
Lars.
Here.
Warren.
Here.
And myself. So we've got a full committee. Let's move forward to approving the minutes from January 6th. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all approved?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and there's no nays to that, so it looks like we are approved for the minutes for January 6th. Do we have any comments from the public? We have nobody else for the public, right?
Yeah, so we have not received any written comments via email or other written form. And unless Kate has a comment on, as a member public, on an item not on the agenda, we wouldn't have any.
Okay, sounds good. We'll move forward then. Is there any statements of conflict of interest? Okay, so let's move on to the regular agenda. Very exciting for the first agenda item. We have Art in the City and Ives Park. And we'll have a discussion with Commissioner Haug from the Planning Commission about public arts in Ives Park. Kate, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And I think in the staff report communicated our enthusiasm for the sculpture garden that's coming in. And we very much appreciate all the work and time and energy that went into that. And basically, from my perspective, I'm interested in learning more about the Public's Art Committee and what your mission is. I don't know if you have any explicit curatorial goals in terms of building a collection or where you see other potential sites. But from the Parks, Parks Commission / Planning Commission point of view, we're very interested in having artwork in public spaces. So,
Excuse me, Kate, and is there any possibility you can turn on your video?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Aye.
Hi.
So just a comment to your question. I, many years ago, got a committee together and developed a public arts ordinance, which the city then passed. And the goal was to build a collection of outdoor work. And in the ordinance, it specifies what kinds of art we can have, okay? And it's a percentage of building, of commercial or remodel of commercial that develops the money for this. And we have been struggling to get something in, and we hope, I don't know what happened last night at the council, but Ned Con was our first award. We've looked at murals. There are other things that can go into the city, but the goal is to put them on city land. And Ives Park would qualify. And of course, we're going to put a lot of art there with the sculpture garden and have a permanent collection. So there's a piece commissioned for the wall of the library that faces Bodega Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And Carrie can tell you about the progress of that. And that's permanent. It'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's made of material that's lasting. The same with Ned's work. It's lasting. And so that would really be the goal. Look at various places. It's very hard to come up with spaces in Sebastopol for various reasons. Some are visual, some are restrictions, ordinance restrictions, and so forth. And so that's just a kind of a thumbnail sketch if you have questions for me.
Well, do you have any particular curatorial goals? Are you looking specifically at Californian artists, at North Bay artists?
Yes, we have looked for It's not in the ordinance, but we have been sending out applications all over California. The first calls many years ago, there were people from all over California that applied. It happens that Ned is from Sebastopol, and the back and forth of working with him has been a lot of time. It's also Michael McGinnis, who is the second one, is going to live in Sebastopol, but he is an instructor at the junior college in Santa Rosa. So these are two local people, and in reality, it's much easier to work with somebody if there's back and forth relationships. And it's otherwise, we've had people, we would have to buy something that is already made, usually, that comes from, their inventory of work, which is not bad to do, but it's more time for them to come up here for meetings and so forth.
Right.
And
So
also,
yeah,
okay.
we do not have a theme we're working on. Ned's is abstract, and Michael McGinnis's work is abstract representational. So those are some of the thoughts.
The one thing that we have been looking at is art at the portals or the entrances to the city. And I want to say that the enthusiasm and support from the city council for Ned's piece and for public art was just really wonderful. And although we have often spent a fair amount of time talking about and looking at different sites, the council was very interested in exploring all sorts of sites and so on. So that's part of what happened last night. And I just,
That's on the
that
next
is talking
agenda
about the
item,
pool and everything, ideas about it. I just think it's wonderful that the city council is jumping in to expand and support. Jen?
Thanks, Margie. I also it's very, reading your introduction, it looked a lot like you were
What is up,
interested in
fuckers?
looking at having a piece specifically maybe at the entrance to Ives Park at Jewel to kind of compensate the sculpture garden that Margie and Warren have been working so hard on. They're the subcommittee for the Ives Park. I'm sorry, for the subcommittee for the sculpture garden, which leads up to Ives Park. And so, yeah, specific questions for the sculpture garden could be directed to Margie and Warren. And then what I'm understanding from reading your introduction, that you're interested in possibly having us possibly do one of our next grants to do a specific sculpture at one of the entrances to Ives Park, say, for instance, the Jewel Avenue entrance?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. I mean, I'm curious about that as a possibility. I'm also curious about sculptures that could be positioned at trailheads in the Laguna, or other places where art and, I think in the proposal, there was the Andy Goldsworthy examples in the Presidio. You guys are probably familiar with those. And so I'm also thinking about ways that we can work with the natural beauty and our abundance of public space here, and also think about it in terms of public art projects. If there's any interest, once again, I'm just, trying to see what your interest is, the other idea that we're interested in terms from the Parks Committee is having a mural around the fencing of Ives Pool. But I don't know if that would necessarily, that if that would qualify in terms of what your mission statement is. So I feel like I'm more not necessarily on a directive mission here, but more as a fact finding and see where there's places for collaboration and mutual benefit, because I think we're all interested. I think the underlying thing is we're all interested in beautifying and improving our public spaces. and making them more interesting and intellectually stimulating for our citizens and people who visit here. You know, I think that's the general goal of this type of endeavor. And so I'm just trying to like think about where is there overlap? How can we work together to, you know, for mutual benefit for us and for the general public, obviously.
So a long time ago, when we were looking at places, basically we're a drive-through city of Highway 12 and 116. And if we could get pieces on those avenues, they would be seen by more people. Somewhere on the Laguna, I think there's some kind of, Carrie knows what the reasons are we can't do things there, because we looked at that originally where there's an entrance just by the Chevron station. And there was some, I can't remember what it's called, but a reason we couldn't use that land.
Yeah, there, and Warren, I can address that because this is actually, it is part of the next item, but it kind of interacts with this.
Okay.
The council would still like us to look at if that's possible to do the Medcon sculpture and or other sculptures in the Laguna, Tamagotchi Park, AmeriCorps Trail areas. They have conservation easements on them with ag and open space as part of the funding for the acquisition and development of those projects, which restricts the ability to do artwork. However, council asked us to take a closer look, and actually one of our council members sits on their board, and so to try to discuss that further with them and see if we can push them and see if that's possible to do there. So in general, yes, they're not, it's not a free-for-all because of the conservation easement in the Laguna areas.
Yeah, so there was like an opening up of possibilities that we have thought previously might not be viable at all. So that was very
But it's a discussion to
encouraging.
be had also. Yeah, it's still a discussion to be had because
Yeah.
it's the ag and open space
I'd like to ask
conservation.
Kate, can you just say what you think the relationship is between your subcommittee and the Public Arts Committee in terms of function? I understand, you know, your interest and overlapping and so on and so on, but in terms of actual action and functioning, what you see that relationship is.
Well, what I would hope it to be, and I think part of it is, I think, you know, maybe this discussion is defining what that relationship is. You know, I don't necessarily have any predetermined ideas because I'm just getting to know you guys. But I would say, you know, for instance, if there was, you know, if it was determined or, you know, there was a productive conversation about a sculpture at the Jewel and Willow entrance of the park, or the Jewel entrance of the park, working together, or if there was an interest in some sort of collaboration around the mural at Ives Pool, that maybe it's not necessarily something you would commission, but you could maybe help us do a call for artists and help us kind of with the administrative part of that, because you obviously have already done call for artists and you have knowledge and mind share in that way that we wouldn't necessarily have. Or, you know, for instance, if we were doing a mural, you know, what, you know, I might say, what would you think would be a reasonable artist fee for something like this? You know, just trying to use your expertise either in projects that that you necessarily aren't funding, but you would just have a broader based knowledge about than perhaps somebody on our committee would.
So I'm still not quite clear what from your perspective, the function of your subcommittee, what your subcommittee would actually be doing and how that's different from what the PAC does.
Oh, well,
and Kate, maybe I can take a step back here. So our planning commission functions as our park commission as well. When they have had the discussions about parks in the city of Sebastopol, one of the recurring themes is Ives Park, and that it's being loved to death. And it has a number of different maintenance we have this very long-range master plan and vision for it, but what are the Ives Park subcommittee is looking at ways of either progressing elements of the master plan, looking at, and we just met out with Public Works today to look at smaller kind of cleanup items like taking down signs that are not legible or not necessary anymore, those types of things. And one of the things that both the Planning Commission and the subcommittee are interested in is, are there art opportunities in Ives Park or other parks in town, but it started off looking at Ives Park, that could be used to beautify it. And I think there are a couple of different ways that that could work in collaboration between the two committees. One is if the Public Art Committee sees, yeah, there's a good project here for the Public Art Committee to do as a call for artists with Ives Park as a site, that's one option. I think Kate's trying not to step on toes and say, if you guys don't want to spend public art funding money on it, could you, similar to the Black Lives Matter, I described how, you had assigned a liaison to work, an artistic liaison to assist that group, even though, the PAC didn't necessarily want to have full control over it. And that was, Kate, just so you know, that was one where the initial concept, because it's on public property, was reviewed by PAC, and then there was a liaison to help assist with the implementation of it. And so that's, how you guys want to interact with each other is really open to what the PAC is interested in doing as well.
I wanted to make a comment. I looked over the proposed master plan. Is there a date upon which that's going to be voted and actually made the master plan?
So the master plan has been adopted. It was adopted a few years ago by City Council. So that is an official plan. The implementation of it is a very long range, just because it's a large plan and it's a lot of it is not funded at this time.
Okay. So looking over the plan, I noticed number 15 is the one that states about having entrance gateway features.
It's the same way.
And since that's the main element that I notice anyway in the plan that refers to something that's really artistic, as Carrie and previous members spoke to, that would certainly be a place where I feel like the PAC could play a role in helping to either find the artist and or give, artistic input into the exact siting of those and what they are.
I'm sorry,
on the first assignment
for the members of the public, please remain unmuted or you will be removed from the meeting. All right, thank you, Alan, for taking care of that.
Guess they didn't like what I was saying.
I think that's the first time a City of Sebastopol meeting has been Zoom bombed, so there you go. It's got
that's what that was. Okay.
This is out of time. Okay, thank you, Carrie. So just do I need to restate that really briefly and quickly? Kate, did you understand what I said?
Yeah, I think from what you said, I understood you to say that you see the entryway as a point of collaboration, as clearly outlined by item number 15.
Correct.
Yeah. Which I think is great.
Sorry. Could I ask a couple more questions along the line where Margie was going, which would be to define a little bit more about exactly each of the roles? And I think that maybe some of that could be done since we might not know them all now. But when you first originally said what you might need from us would be, say, help you with a call for artists.
Yeah.
Say we did that and we gave you some drafts of call for artists we've put out and one that successfully worked.
Yeah.
Then you guys would do the call and you guys would do the judging and you guys would pay for it? Or where are you imagining this happening in more specific terms?
Yeah, so I think it can happen several different ways, depending on, once again, I'm speaking as a lone person, not my entire commission. So I don't want to speak for the entire, but I feel like there could be either it could be as simple as you handing off calls that you've done before, and then we could take over the call. or it could be you guys do the call, you do the judging, and then, maybe we figure, see if we can pay for it if we have space or interest from our Measure M funds, I think, or other, or if it's something that you guys are really into and you're like, we want to support this monetarily, then, I think it would just depend on what level you have time. Obviously, I'm assuming you're an all volunteer organization. And so whatever level of interest and time you want to put towards it, I'm not looking to overburden you because you're already doing a terrific service to the city. So it's more of just seeing where your expertise and knowledge base could help us, and then how far you want to go into that.
So leading on that, could we just go around and get everybody's opinion on thoughts of maybe what everybody would like to see our role specifically be? Margie, do you want to start briefly?
I'm still trying to sort it out. I mean, it almost sounds like two parallel committees.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, because Kate, you're, talking about ideas, putting out calls, making determinations, judging, and funding. And then it sounded like you said, well, you could do this, or we could do this, or we could do that. So that sounds like it's just a parallel, and that perhaps your committee is more specifically focused in parks, but I'm not sure about that. So I think it's great, to have ideas and have the city support art. And some of the ideas you're mentioning, we have already talked about doing, and some we have not. So I just, I think it's good. It's not clear.
Yeah, I guess I would just comment, I would say, for instance, like the interest, so if your committee was interested, let's say, in pursuing a sculpture at the Jewel Street entrance, right? And it's an actual part of your collection, like it's something that you're interested in developing as part of the overall public arts collection, that would be a discrete item that would probably be pretty much fully under your jurisdiction. But we would welcome it in the same way that we welcome the sculpture garden that you're producing. And then on the other hand, I see the potential mural around Ives Park as something that I'm not sure if you guys would be, how interested you would be in something like that, because it's not necessarily, I don't know how that would work in your rubric of what the collection that you're building, how it would fit in the collection that you're building or what you guys do. So in that case, I would say maybe that's a project where maybe we would use your expertise and just how do we draft a call for artists, and then how would we, what are some tools of evaluation we might use after we get artists' slides and portfolios in.
So from my understanding, a mural around Ives Park would be completely within our realm of something that we've also even considered before. I know we talked to the council about that before. So since it's on public property, that is within our realm of something that we could do. But let's keep going around and get a couple more comments.
Let me just add one little thing.
Oh, go ahead, Margie. Yeah,
which is as another idea rather than mural was mosaic. So just wanted to throw that in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because it's fitting with the pool. Thank you.
Let's make sure everybody gets a comment. Warren, did you have any comments? Okay.
I'd say you would have to go back to your committee and iron your thoughts out, because there's too much vagueness in all this at the moment. I think we'd have to look at the site that you're talking about. The fence around Ives Park means very little to me at this moment. There's a large fish sculpture. Is it the fence in front of that? And if so, then those things would conflict. But I think you need to eliminate the maybes and get down to the particulars, and then talk again, see what your committee says.
Thank you, Warren. Lars, do you have anything?
I think it's actually fairly simple. Any artwork proposed in a city park should involve us in in the project, and it should just start out as a discussion. You know, what are you thinking? What are we thinking? And then it can lead to a proposal or an RFP or whatever it might be. I think we only meet once a month, but I think we have capacity to look at, and jurisdiction, I guess, to look at every piece of artwork that goes into a public place. So
Thanks, Lars.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's very complicated. I would say, just specifically to Ives Park, you know, we just created this awesome giant public art thing in Ives Park. So I would be much more interested in focusing attention elsewhere next time, you know, and these gateway ideas people brought up are really something that is important. I think we should really pursue. Not that I'm against having another piece over on Jewel, but I would not, you know, just given money and time and everything, I'd start putting attention elsewhere in the city.
That's good feedback.
Thanks, Lars. Jeff, how about you?
I agree with Lars. I would pretty much just say ditto what he said. I was thinking along the same lines. I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of the art being part of the PAC's responsibility. And I would just say, Kate, as the timeline moves along for the Ives Park art installations, perhaps the PAC would have an agenda item where we would discuss something, and then we would then share that feedback with you, or again, you would attend one of our meetings to bring it up again. For example, with those entrances, maybe it's not a sculpture, maybe it's an arch, maybe it's some kind of an entrance you know, message that goes in those 3 locations. So yeah, so that's what I'd say.
And thanks, Jeff. And the last thing I'll add is, from my experience on this board and working with city council, I find it a lot easier when we're working with more specifics. So like Warren suggested, maybe going back to the Ives Park subcommittee that you're on and picking out a spot that you really want something. Let's just say it's the mural. And then come to us with that and say, here's what we want, something here, whether it's a mosaic or a mural, we want something on this piece of land or this wall. And maybe that way we can say, yes, we have this much money. A mural, for instance, I believe could be a lot less expensive than a sculpture with footing. And, you know, so maybe at that point we could say we are doing an entrance piece, but we still might have another 15,000 that we could put toward a mural or so, just for example, in Ives Park. And it wouldn't really, you know, diminish what we're doing. There's multiple ways we could do multiple things at the same time. However, when it becomes really convoluted, we've had experience like with Ned Khan, we didn't know where his piece is going to be. Now it's been drug out for years, where that I think would really help us to be specific, ask us for what you want. And I think we could really be excited to make it happen because, but I love the idea, just more like, what do you really want? And I think it's fine to ask for us for whatever it is you need. If you want the money, we could run the call. So it's exciting though. I really love it. So.
Okay, well, I think this has been super helpful for me and informative, because I can go back to my committee. I can tell them that you're interested in specifics, and just to bring ideas to you, and with specific locations, what kind, and you're thinking about medium and that you're very interested and supportive is what I feel like I'm hearing, but you need specifics.
I think it would help move the process along a little faster.
Okay. No, I agree. Yeah.
You wanted to start, figure out what your main goal is.
Okay.
The entrance piece, or did you want, and I agree with Lars, we already are doing a lot at Ives Park, but like the mural, if you wanted something like that, for instance, we want this wall done.
Okay.
Let's, you know, but you guys have to figure out what your top, say, give us your top 2 priorities.
Okay,
and
great.
That might be easier.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I look forward to meeting with you guys again. I'm very enthusiastic and open, and I really appreciate that. And I will go back and get more specifics, and then hopefully see you on another agenda item in the future.
Thank you so much for coming, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
might hang out to listen to the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
More than welcome. Okay, that was awesome. Let's move on to the update on the Ned Kahn sculpture. And even though I was on the city council call, I'm going to let Margie take this one.
Okay. First of all, City Council loved the sculpture. Everyone was very enthusiastic. And site. So initially I was saying, you know,
Marty, you could just say they
Yeah.
didn't love the site.
what? They didn't love the site?
They
Well,
love
some
the
of them-
sculpture, they didn't love the site.
Some thought it was okay, but they said it's like their feeling was hiding your light under a bushel. And there was a concern about flooding, so that's another discussion. So they want to investigate sites. And initially my feeling was part of what I picked up from the PAC, I believe, other members, was, you know, and Ned made that long list that we've been through this, we've done a lot with this. Let's start, let's put it here. Ned was saying, well, it's movable. And I was saying, let's just start with this as the site and move forward. But the council really started talking, and Sarah had a whole bunch of lists. And the one thing I did find also is a possibility was maybe they could open up the open space location, and it is more of a entrance to the city. So my impression is that's where it's at right now, is they want to take the time and look at sites. And I think, you know, it's lots of fun to do, but you can do it forever. But maybe something new and even better would come. And Ned, one other thing was Ned said, he said, yes, you know, I'm open to doing this. So I said, you know, I think that's significant.
Thanks,
And Jen,
Margie.
you want to add anything?
I will just add that, just like what I was saying to Kate, I think that there was a slight mistake here where Ned brought the list, listening to these guys go back and forth. What about here? What about here? And go on for almost 2 hours about where they'd rather see the Ned piece. This was not what I thought we were going to do. I think we should be specific. Do you guys want to give us a yay or nay on this sculpture at this spot? We could have actually had it, right? We are so close. We've been working on this for so long. I think maybe that's the idea of what we could do next time, and say, this is what we're interested in doing. Instead of saying, what do you guys think? Should we have it somewhere else? It made it just draw on quite a bit. They all love Ned. Everybody loves Ned's piece. The piece is great. But in my experience with this project, if we move the spot, there's a good chance that the piece is going to change again. And then we're back at ground zero again. This piece has changed multiple times depending on the site. And each site actually has been a different design. So I like this design and this piece. And unfortunately, that's not exactly what got a thumbs up yesterday during city council, because they liked the piece. They just wanted it somewhere else. And maybe we proposed it a little bit off. So that's where I would suggest our goal be moving forward, is we bring a specific piece and site to city council for a thumbs up. Make it a little bit simpler.
And also, I think I thought we were going to, like that list Ned made, I thought that was really important. And I thought that was going to be shared with the city council. And I'd like it to be shared so that they don't have to necessarily redo that work.
I
Sure,
felt
and
like the
we can
list.
share that. So just so you understand, because I know Margie and Jenna had asked, and Warren had asked some questions. So we actually wrote the staff report without the site being in flux. It was, you know, here at this location. As often happens, I get questions from council members about the staff report, and that was one of the questions that came up actually from 2 different council members of. But mainly one, I think it was Vice Mayor Gurney, was, you know, what are the other sites? And I did talk to another council member who was not enamored with the public works site, wasn't necessarily thinking about, you know, asking for what had been considered. But so that often comes up after the staff report. Yes, I could have shared it as part of the meeting. Vice Mayor Gurney said, no, actually you don't need to. Who knows if it had been better or not. But yes, one of the things that came up really was, hey, we really like the sculpture. We want it to be highlighted more, and actually the entries to town, if possible, get it out of the Caltrans right away, but somewhere in that general location is what I heard of as one of the main considerations and places they'd like to see it. And so there's a couple of different options there. I took down the list in writing, and I'm happy to share it with folks. And actually, I can just post it in the chat here right now so that you can all see it. So there's a number of different sites, and they asked us to could we look at other sites and see if one of the more prominent sites. And I think part of it is they actually have fallen in love with the idea of it being an entry to town from the prior site that was approved, and it's hard to get them off of that. So. But as I noted a little bit earlier, the Tamagotchi Park area, there is a part of that is not in the conservation easement. It's more on the Park Village site. There are some regulatory wetlands there, so whether or not that's possible or not, but they did ask us to explore that. And I know that was originally when Warren and Ned and I were looking at the various sites. That was one of the sites that Ned was also interested in. And then the other potential location would be outside of the Caltrans right away on the northwest side of the bridge, where the AmeriCorps Trail will be coming in. And that's one where I am currently in the process of negotiating the conservation easement with Ag and Open Space. And so to request that art pieces be exempt from having to go through their process or exempt from the conservation easement is, if we can't talk them into the Tamagotchi Park one, on the one that isn't, we haven't done that conservation easement, that may be easier to write in, and because it's not already a recorded deed restriction on the parcel.
And Terry, wasn't there another?
Ned's list, that Tamagotchi Park was rejected by Open Space, according to the list that Ned provided.
Yes, that was one person, and I think it's, whether there's flexibility or anything for that. One of our council members sits on the Ag and Open Space board, and she felt, hey, this seems consistent with, it's not anti-conservation. So maybe we can have another discussion with someone higher up in the organization to see what the potential is. And I'm fine doing that. That's not a
So
not an
Carrie,
issue.
wasn't it one of them was mentioning that they had some strings they could maybe pull and get the sculpture into a spot that we couldn't by ourselves? Is that right?
Well, so that was, I'm not gonna say strings because that's a little untoward perhaps, but one of our council members is on the Ag and Open Space board. And I will say, when we originally looked at Tamagotchi Park, I had a brief conversation with someone at one of the lower level staff at Ag and Open Space about that, and it seemed like it was going to be, I'll say, a harder road to hoe, not an impossible one. And that was when Ned was looking at like 10 different sites, and so he just moved on to a different site. So if that is the one that everyone wants, then yeah, maybe it's worth having more extensive conversations with Ag and Open Space to see. I know they do have some components that require a use permit and review by them. Is this something we could do through that venue or some other venue? And so I'll be looping back.
My understanding was that initially where we really wanted it was on the entrance on 12 at the bridge, and the open space location there was one of the first, and that was shot down. And that they were saying, the council was saying, well, maybe we could actually use that. That was, I think, one of our first choices.
And you're talking about first choices in the original 2017
Very start when we were
selection?
talking.
Yeah, and I
about
wasn't here
Ned's.
for that, so I don't,
Yeah.
it may
Yeah.
still be the same
And
same
again, could you
issue,
just,
in which case there is land there that is not currently under conservation easement. And those would be then the ones to look at, which is just west of the Park Village entry, the entry to Tamagotchi Park. That portion of it is not under a conservation easement. It's the Tamagotchi Park that is. So again, we could talk about this for a long time, but I think the sum it is to have a more in-depth conversation with Ag and Open Space on, is it possible to do something where there's a conservation easement, and if not, then the western side of the bridge, there are a couple of areas on both the north and south side that do not currently have a conservation easement on that we could look at.
So then
So
that's
may I-
where we're at right now. We're waiting for you guys to come back with ideas for after the council member works with Ag and Open Spaces to give us ideas of where we can put it, and that's where we're at. So we're just in another holding pattern.
impression, yeah.
So that is, so I have the list that I posted to the chat. I don't know if you can all see it. So there are a few, there were a number of things of potential locations. Some of them have been reviewed.
But what's in terms of protocol, wasn't the piece presented as approved by the Public Art Committee, which is, volunteer group, that reports to the council, and they said, no, they rejected it essentially because they don't like the site, and therefore we have to find a new site. Is that actually?
Thank you. So they, to summarize, they asked if Ned, and by default the PAC as well, were willing to relook at a few of the sites that would be more prominent in the community, more foot traffic at the entries to town, to really say, hey, this is Sebastopol. One of the potential locations they looked at, they suggested was the Burnett Street parking lot, even if that requires losing a couple of parking spaces, which isn't necessarily something we've looked at as a PAC because it's, yeah, exactly. So, because that's something that's not, okay, we were looking at it as is there space for it? Well, no, there's not. There's just these little landscape strips. Now, city council is, if they are interested in that site, what would it take? You'd have to take out, 2 parking spaces, make them into a parklet, and have, a bench or something around it, and enough space for the sculpture. They asked Ned if he was willing to, for that sculpture, and I agree with Jim, we should try to see if we can, with the sculpture that Ned has designed, the wind helix, as he's calling it, if there's a better site amongst some of the locations that they had looked at. And, and some of them were like the Spooner Park, which I know this group talked about, and there's a solar dragon there, which is pretty prominent. And Mayor Glass, whose husband was, when he was on council, was instrumental in putting that in, kind of said, I think he would be fine with that if that sort of was juxtaposed amongst there. If it makes sense for the sculpture, it may not because of the number of trees and the visibility for the sculpture. But basically they said, hey, we like the sculpture, but we'd really like you to take another look at some of these potential sites.
Warren, you had something?
I think we're all over the place again. I would like to ask Carrie if she could nail down with the open space, the west side of the bridge, Tamagotchi Park, and across where the new trailhead will be, and get those firmly established as potential sites before we talk about it anymore. Secondly, I have suggested other sites, and one of them I don't think is a conflict that Ned thinks it is, and that would be on Bodega Ave coming into town from the west, where the signs for Sebastopol City are. And then again, I mentioned there are 3 islands on Colbert Lane that may someday be developed into something. And the third one in with a big red gum tree behind it would be perfect for his sculpture. And it's movable again, but it's right on 116 Covert Lane, which is heavily trafficked to Regal Park. And it would be very, very prominent site. So those are 4 potential sites. I think if we have to look at a new site, those 4 should be looked at by every member of the committee. Spooner Park is a nightmare of confusion. It has city signs, it has a solar dragon, it has everything. It just, you know, we wonderful if the solar dragon, we could give up a panel or 2, but that won't happen. So I think you shouldn't really think about the improbable. Think about the probable. And those are probable sites. Get out, drive around, look at them.
Thank you, Warren. I think that's
Next month, let's have the discussion of what we present to the city. Let's organize them 1, 2, 3, 4. Tomodachi Park 1, the west side of the bridge, where the trail will go on the northwest side of the bridge. Bodega Ave is number 3. Covert Lane, Third Island to the west would be possible 4. Again,
Warren, sorry,
okay.
Go ahead. But can I ask you a question, Warren? Would you be willing to make this short list with Ned and talk to him and say, let's bring it down to 3 spots? And
Ned is open to anything. He does have some restrictions visually, but it's the city we have to convince. Ned
I know, we
said,
just need a shorter list.
well, we have to convince the city that these are viable sites. But Carrie has to do her homework with open space to find out if these sites on the west side of the bridge will work. Because we may not have access to them. You know,
right, I think that, and that's the stuff that I can do with the council member who's on the Ag and Open Space Board. So I can do the research, and I think that makes sense for us to do the research and review the easements with them and see if it's possible first for those 2 sites. And then I agree with Warren, trying to keep it simple to a simple list is better.
Yes.
And if there's a consensus here, then.
Well, I'd like to say that we've had discussion of these sites, including the ones Warren is mentioning. And my impression is that there isn't really that much consensus. There's different perspectives. And I don't know if, one person can list 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever. Just opening it up again, to me, the one that was the open space was my impression, kind of the most agreeable. But all the other ones, we've had these discussions, and that's why we ended up with the Morris Street spot, because those other ones, there were reasons different people brought up that, so I think, it makes sense in a way, yeah, sure, have 3, but I guess I want to see if we can avoid having that same discussion again and have to deal with it all over again, but maybe it's unavoidable.
Would you pick a specific one, Margie, that wasn't the Public Works, if you just had to pick one right now? If everyone just picked one and see where we're at?
Besides the Public Works one?
Besides, yes, definitely.
My memory is that we went through them and there were reasons, and that's why we ended up with Morris Street.
Anybody else have just a suggestion
I would like to suggest maybe this needs to go on the next meeting agenda, and between now and then, each member needs to bring 2 to 3 of the sites to that meeting and advocate for 1 or more, and why. And I'd like to even add a little more homework for you, Carrie and staff, about Spooner Park. I don't think it should be completely eliminated because of all the stuff there. I'd really like to know, can that stuff be moved? I mean, how viable is the solar dragon in that particular location? Does it have to stay there? And the signage, I agree, perhaps that signage can be relocated or redesigned. So I just don't want to eliminate particular places that have a lot of vehicle traffic, whether it's residents or visitors, just because there might be a few conflicts there. So that would be my recommendation, to reflect on those sites some more, unless people feel like they want to spend meeting time today to do that. And I'm assuming there's too much on the agenda.
Jeff, I believe the Solar Dragon is there to supply energy for the well that is on the corner.
For the city water, that is correct.
City water, yes.
Yes. Well, so I think to Margie's point, like these aren't new. So what do we have to reflect on if we've already gone over pros and cons of these sites? And I would, and specifically to me, like, is there not a Caltrans issue with the ones here to the east of town? Like, won't that come up again?
So the idea for the ones on the east side of town is to, because the city owns land on either side outside of Caltrans right away, yes, it would be set back a little bit further, but how far back is that, and would it still be visible?
Right. If it's visible, it seems like it's a Caltrans issue, even if it's not on their property. They might have an issue with it, and just like they did with the other piece that Ned was doing. But I don't know that, but I still think, like,
I don't even think you'd have to tell them about it if it wasn't on their right of way. I don't think they would notice.
They might not have jurisdiction.
No, they review things when there's a traffic implication, but their right of way is so wide because of all of the visual concerns they have. I mean, if that includes the areas of visual concern, we're not talking about a roadway encroachment, which would require the review.
Yeah.
It's simply like a building on a private parcel adjacent to it, which we don't normally send that to them to review unless there's traffic implications.
Okay.
Lastly, I guess I'd just like to throw a little bit of support behind Warren's suggestion of the Bodega Ave entrance. It kind of fits it's an entrance. It's publicly owned land. If I'm not mistaken, that wouldn't be a Caltrans issue because that's not Caltrans. So, right, I mean, Bodega might be one of those that could just be another possibility. That's exactly what City Council wanted it, was to be an entrance. It's not as popular. It's not as heavily trafficked, as Spooner, but it should, anyway, that was a great
And they did
suggestion from
suggest
Warren.
that last night too, yeah. Well, that was one of the suggestions that came up because of it being an entry.
What I'm remembering now is that one of the things that we came to was like, where are the primary real entrance locations and spots in town? And the 116, the actual primary where there's a there is at that light near the park, Ives, where there's that cross section, Jewel and Ives and so on. That's like a primary spot. And coming in the bridge is, primary. If you're going to change it, I'd like to see us pick one that's not just kind of maybe, but vital spots, pulse spots. And I hear what about Spooner, but to me, that's another pulse spot.
All right, well, maybe we just let Carrie come back to us with some options next month, and we'll start again from there.
So what
Yeah,
about,
I can pull together the list from that as well.
so was
Lars?
Ed made the suggestion that it's a portable piece, so can it not get installed in Morris now? And then,
That's what I suggested. And what's his name on the city council thought so, but the others did not.
because
They wanted to look at
spend-
other places. And maybe something better will come. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more desirable locations in all this, exactly as we're talking about it. But to spend another whatever amount of time to get there, I don't know if that's worth it, but
I agree. We've spent many, many hours and many years trying to figure out a spot on this, and I would like to see it move on so we could work on other things.
How about if the public ag spot is really viable, maybe consider that. Otherwise, just say, let's start with the Morris Street and want to continue the discussion for more long times, then do it from there.
Sounds good. All right, well, if that's everything from everybody, we will revisit this next month. And we have the sculpture garden update. I don't know who wants to start with that, Warren or Margie?
It's up to
Warren?
Margie.
You don't have anything? Okay. I'm wondering if we might possibly, at this point, no, okay, so that we were waiting on the county, and then the information I had was that, well, has the county
Do
yet?
you want me to
said
just give
something?
the update from the county/city side, Margie?
Yeah, sure, thanks.
Thank you. So I have gotten the draft permit basically to enter the site and do the work.
Ah.
There's a couple of things that are kind of confusing on it, so I've asked them a couple of questions. It does seem like it's because it's such a small amount of money that we're spending, you know, $5,000. I think they have a threshold of if you do more than 20,000, then it has a larger permitting process. But because the artwork isn't included, it's just the sculpture pads themselves that Public Works will be doing. It's a pretty simple process for them. They have gotten, they needed to reach out to the Sebastopol Center for the Arts to confirm what we told them, which is yes, they're fine with it. So Warren, thank you for your outreach to the center. They have gotten that and they're fine with that. They have gotten me a draft, the permit, and it's like it's like 2 pages long, which is pretty amazing for some of this stuff. So that is great. There are some questions about it. It looks like there's some wording and the dates and those types of things. So I'm having the city attorney look at it, and then I have asked the county a couple of questions. But I would anticipate that it's not going to be problematic to get that signed this month. And so likely looking at rolling out, being able to do the call either later this month and we can let you know, or right after our meeting next month. So beginning of next month is probably most likely.
Okay, so my thought was, could we actually choose and confirm dates, dates of when to have the pads installed, when to put out the call. So can we settle on those dates? And then the other thing is, what are the procedural steps to relocate the fish? But I guess, I don't know if we're not, it's not pressing if they're not going to use Morris Street, but if we are, just to know what the next step is to do that. So the first thing would be dates.
So I would think for the start of a call, if you set it like the day after your next PAC meeting,
March
that
4th.
seemed, thank you. So March 4th, and then as the start of that, and I don't know how long you want to include that. If we get the contract signed with the county this month, then we'll be able to schedule Dante's crew to go in and do the pour probably early next month, I would estimate. So, you know, a week or two after the call is out, they would likely be able to have the concrete pads installed.
So I think we talked about putting out the call after the pads were there. So if people wanted to look at it once they got the call, you know, maybe in a day or two after they get the call, they want to see the pads. So actually we'd need to schedule maybe I don't know. Well, somehow we need to use the information we had when we figured out the sites, because to pour the pads, we need those sites specifically clearly marked.
Right, and yeah, thank you. And so if you want, you can leave the dates open, but say, okay, once the pads are poured, release the call, you know, a couple days after is fine, because the pads will be in place. If you guys, I don't recall on the call, Margie, if we had if there's a set, is it 30 days, 45 days, number of days? And then if that's set by this committee, then we can just fill in the dates as staff when we release the call.
Yeah, hadn't put any dates in, and so that we need to know how long we want the call to be for. So those are things to schedule, and do we want to do that now, or?
That's a good question, just a logistical question. Is there a design for the pads, and does it need approval from the city engineer or any of that?
It does not need approval from the city engineer. I have talked to Dante about the design of them, and they will be basically 4 feet by 4 feet by 12 inches, 12 inches deep, 4 by 4. What he needs from the pack is the exact locations to be marked on the ground with just spray paint or something. I will then coordinate to have the city arborist go out and confirm that that's not going to be an issue for the trees. And if we need to, we might adjust, 1 or 2 of those if it's too close to tree roots. And then Dante's crew will go ahead and pour them. They are planning on putting in some female threads into the bases, so that if we need to do some hold downs or things like that, so that sculpture can be secured so it doesn't walk away. Kate learned a whole bunch about vandalism in parks this morning at her house, so she probably knows. So it wouldn't be something sticking out of the base. So if there's if there's sort of a large heavy thing that's not going to be movable and it's not going to walk, it wouldn't need those. But if there is a need to do something to secure a piece of art, there will be some some threads, steel threads in the sculpture bases that can be discreetly attached to. And so that's the design. It doesn't require any engineering or anything like that. They'll just go out and pour them and do them.
Okay.
I would volunteer to help delineate the sculpture pad sites.
So before the pandemic, we went out and we took some photos, and Jen, you took some videos, maybe, I don't remember. What's the protocol right now for going out and spray painting and delineating and corroborating the locations?
We put nails in the ground long ago. Are they gone? You don't know?
I haven't seen them.
I spent time with you one morning.
Yes, I know.
And so is all that information gone? As you said, we took photos with people on the sites.
Yeah, we could use that to start, I would imagine.
Yeah, so we could try.
I would suggest is that if Warren and Margie, who's our sculpture subcommittee, did the original and sort of know where those in-ground stakes might be. Anything above ground, yes, it has been removed at this point or isn't there anymore. But if you could, with the pictures, go out and do, and I wouldn't do it right now because there's still a lot of rain and stuff going on, but a week or so before they pour them, if you could go out and remark them.
I think not till the day it happens, so they won't get removed again.
Right, so exactly, right before we're going to do it. I do need to have the arborist, there's some coordination, and this is more difficult because we can't just all meet there the same day, but we'll need them marked, and I need to know when that is so I can schedule the arborist to go out and review them. And then obviously the marking in that needs to be coordinated with when Dante's crew will be ready to go out and pour, say, the next day or so. So if you spray paint on the grass, it'll be very easy to, that's not going to go away in a day.
I think if those markers that we put in have been, any of them have fallen away or been removed, and we try to work from the photographs, I have no idea, is this going to be just very easy or kind of a bit of a scavenger difficult hunt? I don't know how long it would take to do that and how hard it would be to do it, but it needs to be done. We may have to refigure some of them. I don't know. Maureen,
Well,
any?
as I suggest, we could coordinate with Dante so we can meet at 8 o'clock, Margie. I have upside down paint. We can mark new locations, but the arborist has to be talked to first. And the county has to authorize use of their land first. And so it's all just coordination. Get those two things done. Then we can meet, and then at 10 o'clock, Dante can start forming to pour. It's not going to take us forever to do that.
My impression is that the sequence is that we need to indicate the spaces before the arborist can rule on it. So that sequence is find the locations, have the arborist rule on it, adjust if we need to. Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
I think the arborist would say you have to stay 6 feet back from a tree or 10 feet back or whatever. And they're looking at the root structure and what damage the pad would do to that. And so that can be information we should get first.
Yes, so we should find out what the rule is. Can you get that for us, Carrie?
Yeah, Alan and I can coordinate that. I believe I already asked her to go out. I don't know if she's gotten out there yet. I haven't heard from her on that, but we'll follow up with that.
Okay.
In the meantime, while you guys are working on that, I would be interested in helping with the call for artists, if anybody's interested in a second look on that, if you guys have worked on it.
I'm happy for you to help.
And Jeff wanted to do something.
And so that's actually, now we're getting into quorum issues. So we would need to we can, if there's one or two people who want to look at it for the dates and things like that, and then we can schedule a final discussion and, set the dates at the next meeting. That would work.
Can maybe
more than two
Jen
people.
and Jeff put together, finalize the call and put in some dates? What about that?
And I believe the call has already been finalized unless there's any.
Yes,
amendments.
that's
We
right.
already
It was
voted on that,
accepted.
So that
Yes,
should
it was.
be fine, other than the
Okay,
dates.
great.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
if the
yeah,
we don't
call's
need to
finalized,
revisit
let's not
that.
even go
Thank
there.
you.
Great,
Right.
great, great.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank
But
you.
we do need to put in dates.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's missing is the dates, the time.
Okay, let's
frames and the
wait
dates.
for the arborist and the pads before we do the dates.
Well, we can
Okay,
ask, wait. We can ask the members right now from the deadline from the announcement to the deadline for application, how much time you think we should allow?
At least 3 months.
That's what we did last time. Is that correct, Warren?
Yes, and it's because we're going to have to look at all these hopeful deluge of applicants
Yeah.
and make
Yeah.
decisions. So our process is to go slowly, isn't it? So we need a lot of time.
Okay, 3 months, good?
That sounds
I'm
good.
good
I
with
think
it.
3 months would be a minimum. You could have the call, we could get everybody in by June and ask for a September opening.
That sounds great to me. Anybody else?
Okay, so call, wait. So the deadline is June. Is that what?
Yes,
Okay. And then,
then we would
and then
have the
selection, installation, and opening in September. And then opening, yes? Okay,
That's a Friday, June 4th is a possibility then as the deadline.
okay. Is
I
that-
would say do not make it on the 4th because city staff will not be here to accept. We work Monday through Thursdays. So it should be the Thursday.
Wait, city staff would not, oh, I see, okay.
And the time should be 5:30, not 5 o'clock, because that's when we end our day. When we did the last library call, it was at 5 and someone submitted after 5 and we had to go through, oh, is this eligible or not? So end of day, 5:30 on a Thursday would be great.
Okay, so what'd you say, June what, 8?
June 3rd, 5:30 p.m.
Yes, Okay,
It's a Thursday.
okay. Excellent. Thank you.
I just had a practical thought on in terms of when you guys, whoever ends up laying out the pad locations, but if the grass hasn't yet been mowed in some way, you might want to bring your weed eater.
And Jen,
I
can
think
you,
we can make sure that Public Works will have it mowed by then. They don't let it get very long. We were out there today and it's looking just great.
can you resend to Warren and me the, any of the pictures or videos or whatever you have?
I have it here to go back down and look for those. I should be able to find that email pretty fast. I know I emailed it. So yeah, I'll try to source those out unless Carrie already found them.
Okay,
I have it written down. Okay, well, if that's it, we could move on to the planning department report. Does anybody else have any comments on the sculpture garden?
I have a comment I want to say.
Sure.
Sitting at the meeting, city council meeting, and hearing their vision of our committee, I just feel like we're a fantastic team.
Mhm.
And I think it's unusual. And I really feel that we support each other like musketeers. It's great. And thank you to everyone.
Thanks for the feel good. Okay, let's move on to the planning department report. Carrie?
Okay, so I don't have a lot to report this month. Upcoming meetings for city council. So a couple items of interest: the Sebastopol Inn, which is now being used for COVID potential, I forget what they call it, vulnerable populations, is open. They have at least a third there of the rooms occupied. We haven't heard any complaints from the police chief or to the police or anything like that yet. They will be looking at some minor modifications coming up, which will go to our design review board. That's just fencing and things like that on the exterior. And then they'll have a longer term transition to permanent supportive housing, which is a year or two kind of a process once the COVID housing use of that site for COVID vulnerable populations has passed. The city council will be reviewing mid-year budget at their next meeting. There's nothing on that related to the public art committee for that. But one of the other things that is coming up is our internal budgets are due in a couple of weeks and then get reviewed by the budget subcommittee and then move on to council. Usually council sees the budget for public hearings, I believe in May, June timeframe for adoption before July 1st, start of the fiscal year. And so I did want to check in with this group. I was planning on putting in a budget number for a potential new call, artist call. I know we had talked about starting to work on that as the two pieces that we currently have underway are completed or nearing completion. So I'm planning on doing that. I know the last two calls have been, I believe, both $35,000. So I don't know if you have, well, we can discuss at the next meeting, but I was planning on either putting in, well, $40,000, which could be 35 for the artist, and then 5,000 if there's city costs like preparing the site or things like that. And that just leaves us a budget placeholder so that we have when we discuss. And that can always be adjusted when the actual location and request to put out a call goes to council in the future. And so that will be not the mid-year budget, that's the actual fiscal year budget. And so that's the budget schedule was adopted by council last night, and that includes my submitting budget information this month, and then March would be the start of meetings for that. And I can also agendize that for our March meeting if we want to get into more particulars about what we think location might be, coinciding with finalizing the NetCon sculpture location. and then getting a more particular budget number from this group. Right now, I think we have about $50,000 not committed in our public art fund. I can report that Exchange Bank did pay their in lieu fee. It was about $14,000 to the park in lieu fee.
And there's no new construction on the horizon?
There is one potential commercial project, which is the Burnett Street, where the Round Table building is. Alan can talk a little bit about that if you're interested in that project, but that was approved by the DRB for a major redo of that building. It will probably go beyond the threshold to the $500,000 threshold for a construction cost where it starts to trigger the in lieu fee. I believe they may be wanting to do the art on their site though. And so that obviously would also come to the PAC. Alan, do you have more information on that?
You pretty much got it spot on. So it's commercial redesigning that building and the facade of it. They're doing it's pretty substantial remodel. So it seems like it's pretty likely that either an art piece or money will be coming to the PAC.
And could you refresh me on the other two projects, the car wash and that big housing project, and whether there would be funds coming to the PAC from either of those?
So residential projects do not pay the fee. So the residential project, they have submitted a formal application. We've deemed it incomplete. There are a number of items they need to address. So that won't, there's nothing scheduled for the DRB at this time for that. But for the PACs, I'm sort of saying that for Lars's information in case he's curious. But for the PAC, that wouldn't be coming to the PAC because it's not subject, residential is not subject to the art fee. The Benedetti car wash, our planning commission had recommended denial of that. But it went to its first hearing to council, who are the final decision makers on that. First meeting in January, and they have indicated that they would like to approve it. They've asked staff to look at revising some of the conditions to adjust noise and some of the other issues that the commission saw and that they discussed at their meeting. It will be returning to the city council for continuance of that review on March 2nd. It was going to be February 16th, but there's a conflict with the budget hearings, so that has been moved March 2nd. I'm not sure yet whether or not that would trigger the fee or not. It depends upon, again, it depends on the valuation of the project. Most likely it would, but I don't. It's a fairly small building, so I'm just not sure on that.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else on the planning department report at all, or any comments?
I can't think of anything else. Alan, do you have anything further? Oh, you should talk about the climate action.
Oh, yeah. So the Climate Action Subcommittee has been established, and they've had their first meeting, I think it was last week, or first formal meeting last week. Essentially, they're still working, trying to figure out their priorities for what climate action initiatives or they want to start focusing on. They're currently meeting twice a month on the, sorry, I'm trying to remember here. I think it's the second and fourth Wednesday at 3:30. If anyone's interested. That's about all that I have.
And everybody's invited to that?
It is a public meeting, so anyone is welcome to attend. All right.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we can look for a move to adjourn. Wrap it up
So
early.
moved.
All right. Anybody else? Is there a second?
A second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Then with a full committee aye, we are moved to adjourn. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
Kate.
Thank you.
Stay well.